Here we see an example of Black Catholic devotion. It shows us the importance of Christianity, either Protestant or Catholic, to Black communities in the Americas. Yet, what we also see is that Black expressions of Christian devotion tend to have some unique characteristics. The traditional explanation for this is that Africans brought to the Americas their indigenous religions that ended up influencing Black expressions of Christian faith. My book shows that we need to add yet another element to the discussion, namely that, especially in the earliest decades of the transatlantic slave trade, a small but influential minority of Africans already identified as Christians before their arrival in the Americas. And I call these people Afro-Atlantic Catholics because their Catholicism started in Africa and then further evolved in the Americas. It is important to correct a misunderstanding regarding the Christianization of enslaved Africans before their arrival in the Americas. Namely, the assumption that their only Christianization had been a quick baptism that had no meaning or importance to them, and that, in other words, Christianization only started for real in America. While this may be true for most Africans, there are good reasons to believe that it was not the case for all. A famous example is a study from 17th century Cartagena, Colombia, where the Jesuit Alonso de Sandoval confirms that a number of enslaved Africans already upon arrival identified as Christians, and that some of them even assisted him in the preparation of baptism of Africans who were not yet familiar with Christianity. Those who helped him originated almost exclusively from parts of Africa with a historically strong Portuguese influence, people whom I call in my book Afro-Atlantic Catholics. Sources like Sandoval also allow us to correct another misunderstanding with regard to the Christianization of Africans in the Americas, namely the assumption that white missionaries were the dominant agents. In my book, I present evidence that Black catechists and Black confraternities played a major role in the Christianization of enslaved Africans. And again, when you look at the background of these catechists, you find that virtually all of them came from parts of Africa with a historically strong Portuguese influence. This convinced me that the development of Black Christianity in America cannot be understood without taking this Portuguese influence in Africa into consideration. The traditional focus on Protestantism has led to a distorted understanding of the meaning of the Christian faith to African Americans and failed to answer a question of key importance, namely, why did Black people embrace the religion of the very same people who were responsible for the enslavement of their ancestors? My book answers this question by acknowledging that Christianity is also an African religion and that it was perceived as such by many enslaved people. It provides evidence that enslaved communities all over the Americas included substantial numbers of Afro-Atlantic Catholics who were as proud of their Christian identity as of their African origins. Their legacy, it claims, was crucial to the further evolution of Black Christianity in the Americas, because they were the ones who built the foundations for future Black religious, social, and political activity. It is therefore a mistake to relate Black Catholicism to passivity or to assume that theirs is a history devoid of resistance. In the 1880s, the American journalist Clarice Deming traveled through the Mississippi Delta and was very interested in Black churches. It surprised him how eager congregations were to have their own church bell. When looking at the African history of Catholicism, we learn that church bells already arrived in Kongo in the 15th century as a gift from the King of Portugal. These bells acquired such a strong symbolic importance that the kingdom's capital, and by extension the kingdom itself, became known as Kongo of the Bell. In my book, I present evidence that the recollection of this history was passed on in Black communities in the American diaspora. We may therefore conclude with a reference to the British geographer Richard Burton's report from the 1860s on a visit to the Kongo, When entering an old Catholic church, this British geographer learned that one object in particular was of great importance to the local population, namely their church bell. It was dated to the year 1700, and it bore the Latin inscription, Se Deus cum nobis, quis contra nos? If God is with us, who can be against us?